Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the latest edition of Wow, Lynch, Wow, dedicated to filmmaker David Lynch and inspired by the triumphant return of Twin Peaks. A warning to everyone who isn't caught up on all 6 episodes of the new season of Twin Peaks: there will be spoilers and they will begin shortly, so viewers and listeners be warned. So things began on the statue that mesmerized Cooper in the previous episode, but this time he's mesmerized by his coat sleeve. The officer strolling the area reminds him there's no loitering. Coop is then mesmerized by his shiny star, which prompts the officer to ask, "Have you been drinking, sir? Any drugs or medication? Have you taken anything?" Ultimately, he decides it's best to take Cooper home. We see the red door. Sonny Jim is reading in his bedroom. The doorbell rings. Janie E. answers the door, and it's the cops. They have Dougie with them. She thanks them for bringing her husband home, and also thanks them for handing her an envelope that was outside their door. She then apologizes to Dougie for forgetting the fact he had no car, and she's still wondering where the hell his car is. While eating a sandwich, Janie E. finally decides it might be best to take Dougie to see a doctor. Dougie apparently already finished his sandwich, and he's munching on what appears to be Miss Vic's chips. Janie E. questions him about the case files, asks about the mysterious envelope, and tells Coop that he must say goodnight to Sonny Jim, who is upstairs waiting for him. Sonny Jim is still reading, and Coop is still munching down on Mrs. Vic's. Sonny Jim beckons him in and smiles. Coop is munching away. Sonny Jim is smiling, and Sonny Jim asks Cooper to stay with him until he falls asleep. He turns the lights off with the clapper, and Coop is once again mesmerized. They have a playful tug-of-war of light and darkness, as the clapper brought on laughter and merriment. But Janie E. is having a closer look at the mysterious envelope, and she decides to interrupt their fun, and she's furious. She shows him the photo of Jade, and Dougie smiles, and he tells Janie E. that Jade gave him 2 rides. "I bet she did," snapped Janie E. The phone then rings. Janie E. is once again furious. It's the ruffians Dougie owes money to, and she instructs them that she will meet them in the park and that she will be the one with the red purse. We learn that Dougie owes $50,000, and after initially being still furious, Janie E. tells Dougie we have a big day tomorrow, and now Coop is mesmerized by the Lucky 7 folder. We see a familiar traffic light, and when it turns red, it is accompanied by mysterious electrical sounds. Mike is creeping around, waving his arm about. He then appears in a fireplace before Cooper, and he says, "You have to wake up, don't die, don't die, don't die." Then what appears to be a divine guiding hand leads Cooper through the case files. Coop starts drawing things like funny ladders and stairwells, and at quick glance, none of it initially appears to make sense. We now see Albert in his car. He's speaking with Gordon Cole on the phone, and Gordon reminds him his work is very important. It's raining outside, and Albert enters an establishment called Max Vaughn's Bar. He seems to be looking for somebody. He finds her. He finds Diane. So Diane was the drinking woman after all, just as many suspected. There goes my guess of Ronette. Now we're in a lumber yard, and Richard, the evil guy from the diner, is snorting something with some shady-looking characters, including the guy we saw at the end of Part 2 who pointed at Shelley. This guy's speaking to Richard while using all types of hand-punching gestures. He mentions he has a problem with his liver, and we soon discover that he likes the King and I. He tells Richard he will be watching him, and he shows him a coin. He flips the coin, and the coin stays in the air, flipping around but not falling. And then inexplicably, Richard winds up removing the coin from his mouth. Then the coin suddenly falls from where it was previously suspended and drops back down, no longer in Richard's hand. A magic trick? This whole thing was eerily similar to what Mrs. Tremont's grandkid did with the creamed corn. Is it the same guy? Is this him all grown up? Richard is freaked out by the scene he just witnessed, and he's driving around angrily after that encounter. At the Fat Trout Trailer Park, our old buddy Carl is still there from Fire Walk with Me. He gets a ride into town with some guys. Sounds like they might be big fans of Jacoby's podcast. Meanwhile, Heidi is at the Double R. She's chatting with Miriam, who we soon learn is very fond of pie. She tips them well, and Shelley and Heidi decide it's a good idea to treat Miriam to some pie the next time she's at the Double R. Meanwhile, Richard is still driving around angrily, and he begins to get fired up. Meanwhile, Carl is having a smoke and a coffee. He's mesmerized by the trees above, and then his attention is drawn to a mother and child joyfully playing. A man sitting in a vehicle waves the mother and her child to cross the street, and in an absolutely horrifying moment, Richard runs down the little boy. Miriam sees him drive by when she was leaving the Double R with coffee, and Carl watches on as a yellow aura seems to rise from the dead boy's body before dissipating away. Carl investigates the scene, and they didn't cheat this dreadful moment one bit. The bystanders and witnesses are all there feeling the mother's grief, and Carl notices a number 6 on a telephone pole with accompanying electrical noises. This, too, is similar to something we saw in Fire Walk with Me. Now we're in Vegas, and the man in the office sees red appear on his laptop screen. He opens a cabinet and retrieves an envelope that has a spot on it. He quickly types something on his laptop and nervously glances at the spotted envelope. Dougie's exploded car is being towed away. The plate was on the roof. The 119 woman grows agitated, and the authorities now know who the exploded car belonged to. A small man is rolling dice and seems to be recording the results. Then he receives an envelope, and it's the same spotted envelope we saw before. It has 2 pictures in it, Dougie and the woman with the BlackBerry who was originally in charge of killing Dougie. He whacks the images with a pointed object, and he's obviously pretty fired up about the idea of having some new targets. Meanwhile, Coop is smiling in the elevator with coffee and some case files. He's in the moment, enjoying life, and after eventually stepping off the elevator, he gets called into the big boss's office. At first, the boss can't make any sense of Cooper's childlike scribblings. Coop then becomes mesmerized again, this time by the boxing poster. And all this time, the big boss eventually sees that there is a method to the madness of the illustrations. And it now appears that Cooper exposed some type of ongoing fraud within the company. The big boss thanks Dougie Coop and tells him to keep the information to himself, while also informing Coop he may need his help again. Janie E. owns the terms of the negotiation with the ruffians who want $52,000. She gives them a big piece of her 99%er mind, and she tells them that she will generously give them $25,000 and that they'll like it. Then she sternly warns the ruffians before bolting away. Next, the small man busts into an office and he schools everyone in his path, including the BlackBerry lady boss who was originally hired to kill Dougie. He kicks all sorts of ass and creates all types of mayhem, brutally murdering everyone in sight. After the slaughter, he became dismayed, discovering he had damaged his weapon, which then seems to sadden him after that sudden explosion of rage. Richard then pulls over and he does a really shoddy job of cleaning up the blood from the front of his vehicle. This was almost as bad as Bobby and Laura's piss-poor efforts of burying that body together. Hawk drops a coin that rolls away in the men's room. He follows it. It's an Indian head coin. He sees the manufacturing label on the stall door, and there's another Indian head. He raises his eyes upwards and realizes there's a screw missing on the panel. He investigates and begins to remove the panel. Chad interrupts him midway through and acts as a tattletale nuisance, but Hawk dismisses him and ultimately finds what appears to be the diary pages. Are these the missing diary pages that Annie told Laura to write in her diary? It would seem that they are, and this was apparently the work of Doppelkoop. Doris busts in, and she's none too happy about the fact that the car isn't fixed. She throws a fit, Frank tries to calm her down, and we learn that Doris has a son who committed suicide, and that she wasn't always like this. Meanwhile, Chad is a real dick. Overall, I thought Part 6 was another solid installment that concluded certain mysteries while opening doors to others. We now know the mystery drinking woman was Diane after all, and I can't wait to see what information her character might potentially reveal. And I think that we now finally have Annie's diary pages and that we found the key piece of what was missing, which might get Hawk off to a proper search for Coop. Can't wait to see where things go next. What did you think of Part 6? Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for tuning in, hope you enjoyed, and have a great night, everyone.